Okay, now this is part 2 of the revival methods for stress and heat related issues video. And now we're going to get into 2 types of heat exhaustion or heat stroke. Those terms are confusing, and especially when you throw in sunstroke for people. I get them mixed up a lot myself. So we're going to look at it as a yang or a yin type of condition. The yang type of heat stroke would be when a person falls down and they're tense. It's a more serious situation. You're probably seeing a core temperature of 104 or more by the time it reaches that stage. And ideally you should have caught it sooner. And then there's a flaccid or the yin type of heat exhaustion, where they're more loose, they're more drained. For full-on heat stroke, you're looking at a serious situation that could see trauma specialists putting you into a tub filled with ice to bring your temperature down. And I guess to understand the difference between the yang and the yin conditions, think of yang as heat, and you know that heat or hot air rises, and cold is a yin situation and cold air descends. So with the yang situation, you have the qi up like this and you're tense, and with the yin situation, your qi has descended and you're more loose. Okay, so we'll look at the more serious case first. Now the patient would have stopped sweating at this point. If someone has gotten overheated and are sweating, and the situation progresses to the point that they stop sweating, then this is a case for concern. Other symptoms could range from disorientation to loss of consciousness to falling into a coma or even death. If you're going to be doing anything in extreme heat, educate yourself on all the symptoms and effects of heat exhaustion and heat stroke. If they fall to the ground with clenched fists and a tense body, that's a yang issue and a very serious condition. Call for an ambulance and then begin the following treatments. To begin with, bleed the 12 Jingwo points, 6 on each hand, and the Sichuan points at the tips of each finger. Now if you refer to the previous video, part 1 here, or to the hanging video, then I've got these points on the hand I explained and pointed out to you. And again, just a couple of drops of blood, don't overdo it. Now next, you're going to nail cut, do 26. So again, with your thumbnail, press in there hard to cut with your nail, and then you're going to press firmly or peck at large intestine 4 and liver 3. Now this dot right here is large intestine 4, and then again also there's a right and a left one. Now if you look for the place where the bones of your first finger or your thumb and your second finger or your index finger meet, right in here, this is the place. Press inward and then slightly maybe underneath the finger bones, or press on it. Now for going the wrong place. Okay, next, also for liver 3. Now look at the foot, and then for the first two, just ahead of where these first 2 bones meet in here at this dot, this is liver 3. Now this is a good general health point to know, and the ladies in particular would want to know about this. You can use the heel of one foot to put pressure on liver 3 on one foot, and then switch sides. You might want to Google liver 3 benefits and just educate yourself on that some. And I have a note for myself, lucky because I almost forgot. Okay, if it's a woman and if she's pregnant or might be pregnant, large intestine 4 is a point to avoid. So if the woman is possibly pregnant, do not use this point. This point is always contraindicated with pregnant women. That's an important thing to remember. So after liver 3, then press do 20. Now again, as I mentioned, it's 5 soon posterior of the anterior hairline, which would put it right about where Herford's braid starts. Now cut into do 20, and after that, then look for Laogong or pericardium 8. If you take your middle finger, like you're making a fist, where it touches here, this is, okay, relax now. This is pericardium 8. Take their hand and just pluck as hard as you can. You're gathering energy into here, and you're plucking and then pressing in here at pericardium 8. And do the same thing with stomach 40, which is about the midpoint between the kneecap and the ankle. Or if you're using your thumb, it would be about 8 thumb widths above the ankle and about 2 thumb widths to the outside, not on the inside, but on the outside of the shin. And then again, press firmly there into stomach 40. And then lastly, at the you have kidney 1 on the foot, and if you look at a hanging revival video, you can see this. I'm doing moxibustion and there at this point, and you're going to want to press on kidney 1, which if you take the sole of the foot and you curl the toes in by the ball of the foot, you'll see a little depression, and that's where you're going to want firm pressure right there, kidney 1. Okay, now for a yin or flaccid heat exhaustion case. This is where the person is feeling drained and loose rather than tense. This could lead to the more serious type, but hopefully you'll correct the condition before it reaches that stage. You could see a loss of consciousness here, intense sweating, their mouth hanging open, feeble breathing, possibly diarrhea, and a loss of bladder control. So watch your friends for this, and for your own self if you're in the heat and you notice that you're feel like you're starting to fade, and if you're sweating profusely, feel like your mouth is hanging open and your breathing is getting really weak, then especially if you're on the next Million Man or Million Woman march, or if you have media all around you, or maybe some girl or some guy that you're planning on snagging, if you notice those conditions, then just be aware that diarrhea and loss of bladder control might be coming. So you're going to want to take care of yourself pretty quick before it reaches that point. So if it's a severe case like I just described, call an ambulance again, and then begin the following treatment. The first thing you do is to bleed the Sichuan points at the fingertips, a couple of drops of blood from each one, and then nail cut the most common revival point right here, governing vessel 26 or do 26. And as I explained in the previous video, often paired with do 26, you have pericardium 6 right here, 2 thumb widths above this crease in the middle of these 2 tendons. Now cut do 26 and now cut pericardium 6. And then you have only 1 here, but for pericardium 6, again, you have 2. You have 1 on each arm, a right and a left. Now after that, then you're going to want liver 2 on the foot. Hopefully you can see it right here, in between the first and second toes. Press firmly on liver 2, And then if the person is not pregnant, then again, press firmly here on large intestine 4. And then finally, if you feel confident, you can bleed bladder 40. I think she just touched the spot. If you can't see the spot, it's behind the knee and it's in the middle of that ticklish. It's in the middle of the that crease that runs across the backside of your knee and in between the tendons of biceps femoris and semitendinosus. Now these are techniques to use if you suspect that the person's temperature is rising and they're heading for full-on stroke. Note that when they become disoriented and they stop sweating, that's when things are taking a turn for the worst. And if this seems overwhelming to you or a lot to take in the beginning, then just watch the video several times and practice it frequently with a partner or maybe with different partners, because everybody's body is different. And then soon something that was complicated or overwhelming to you in the beginning is going to be more intuitive or second nature. You'll be more comfortable with it and more likely to be able to perform these techniques properly when the time comes. Okay, now I'm going to introduce you to Gua Sha or Gua Feng. This is another treatment for heat exhaustion, and Gua Sha is a system that I like quite a lot. I have quite a few different Gua Sha scrapers or Gua Sha tools. This is a jade stone scraper that would be good for a situation like this because jade has a cooling nature. I have water buffalo tools. I have other black stone, and then I have several tools that I made myself. These are two that I'm still working on from bison horn. I need better tools though, but these are the ones, the bison horn tools are the ones that I like the best. You can also use a smooth metal jar lid for scraping. Also, when the moment comes, you just have to use whatever thin, smooth tool that you can find. Now, when you're doing Gua Sha, you always want to scrape downward and outward because you're pulling, whether it's heat, wind, tension, whatever, you're trying to pull it out. So you want to go from the center of the body down or out. You're not pushing anything into the body. So always remember to go down and out. You're going to want to use like olive oil, coconut oil, some kind of lubricant. They make balms specifically for Gua Sha that I've never used. You don't want to use hot oil. And in any area up to about 30 scrapes in one spot is sufficient. Now, in some situations where you're not wanting to draw the Sha out, you can even go against or over light clothing. Okay, but again, you're probably not going to get Sha out at that time. Now, what Sha is it's a red splotches or red clusters or little red spots that you'll see when you're performing Gua Sha or cupping. A lot of people, when they see them, especially when it's dark, they think that it's a bruise, and it's not a bruise. A bruise is a result of an impact injury, and a bruise hurts when you touch it. Regardless how deep and how dark the Sha is resultant from Gua Sha treatment, it doesn't hurt. It doesn't hurt afterwards when you touch it, and it shouldn't hurt when you're receiving Gua Sha. If Gua Sha hurts, then the person isn't doing it right. And so when you start out with Gua Sha, then start out fairly light. Okay, put your tool at about a 45-degree angle to the skin and go light, and then you can get you can go move on to using more pressure, but you need to ask them if it's comfortable or if it's painful. Okay, now the method to use for heat exhaustion is you start with the temples, both temples, okay, and then you scrape down lightly. Scrape down the temples, drawing heat out from here, and then again, like I mentioned in the other video that I made, yi leads qi, and so your yi, or your intent, your mind, is what's leading the qi, and so you need to focus on what you're doing. So as you're scraping here, you're not watching some girl walk by over here or whatever. Pay attention to what you're doing and take what you're doing seriously. After the temples, start at the base of the neck and scrape down maybe 5 or 6 inches at a time. Work your way down both sides of the spine from the base of the skull all the way down to the tailbone. Okay, after the back, then, underneath here first, and the armpits, hopefully they're not too stinky. Okay, after that, the inside of the elbow, lightly scraping away, again, both sides. Then the inside of the crease, the wrist, the inside of the wrist. And then you want to do the intercostal spaces, in between the ribs, okay, from the center, going towards the outside. And then lastly, the back of the knee, inside the back of the knee, again, scraping down. Now, if you're curious about gua sha, then look at my Smoke and Massage Facebook page, or message me and ask me. Let's see, when you're doing this, you're going to be scraping the heat out of their body, and when you're doing gua sha, always scrape down and outwards.